go?
Yeah, I'm good to go. We can start. I think Archana Kurana madam can start, please. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be part of Sarthak Educational Trust as a board member for Ludhiana and getting this chance to start this panel. Along with me, there are so many dignitaries who are going to talk about various things. But before we come back to the panel discussion, I would just like to begin with that in this 13th year of Sarthak being founded by Dr. Jitendra Agarwal, I would like to begin with a thank you for Sarthak Education Trust, Mr. Dr. Jitendra Agarwal and other team members. It's a wonderful opportunity that they are bringing us together with such dignitaries, such important people who are going to talk about a lot of path towards empowering Divyangans. In building entrepreneurship avenues, it's a very different kind of a setup altogether. Because when we talk about being a job creator, it is like we are talking about a different ecosystem altogether. And that is the reason why we are all here to discuss and talk about how Digital India, as well as our digital platform, along with entrepreneurship development, different kind of schemes and different kind of apps and different kind of facilities that we are going to talk and provide about, is going to create a different kind of ecosystem altogether. There is a very beautiful quote by Socrates. I would like to take you through that. Socrates is basically the secret. He said basically, the secret of change is to focus all your energy, not in finding the old, but the new. And this is actually our theme is going to talk about today, that the need of reformation of the ideas set by the societies and the need to overcome barriers by believing in individuals' capabilities and resilience. India, being such a beautiful country, but filled with talented people, skilled people, and we all know that our problem is the high population. Now, imagine that this high population also have a percentage of people who are Divyangans. And amongst that also, we have Divyangans who are from an underprivileged background. Now we have to talk about an entire future, talking about a visionary kind of a thing where we can actually open up certain venues where these people can come up, join together, become a part of progressive India. This is an idea, a passion is what it takes to begin your dream of starting a business. Furthermore, there are numerous support groups and fund programs organized by government as well as various non-profit organizations for people with disabilities who wants to give us a complete ecosystem where we have to start up our own business. Today, with the support of these dignitaries, these entrepreneurs, these people who are present here for this panel, we are going to talk about a discussion. We will discuss about various resources provided by government, other agencies, other NGOs, and obviously Sarthak Educational Trust. We will be going to talk about development of business plan, marketing and operating strategies, business growth, overcoming barriers and challenges, how behavioral transformation is required to become an entrepreneur or a job maker, technology as an enabler. Amongst some of these important points, also we will go into the deeper understanding of policy building in disabled entrepreneurship, financial literacy for PWDs, so that everyone amongst us, every one of them can manifest the intentions they have set to create a futuristic, visionary ecosystem, which can take now all our developments towards making India a progressive nation. Along with this, now I would like to welcome Mr. Chandramouli, Mr. N.B. Chandramouli, board member Sarthak. He is currently the advisory board member of Sarthak Western Region, very passionate about getting the right concerns and outcomes for differently able people. High performance global operations and supply chain leader with 32 years of corporate experience in MNCs. He have held positions of increasing in responsibilities, including being in the leadership teams at national, regional, and global levels. He also possesses extensive cross-functional experience to find innovative ways to solve enterprising problems. He also believes in process-driven, fact-based working. Obviously, he's an inspiring leader with a strong underpinning of ethics who builds best-in-class teams, nurturing talent and providing them with vision, clarity of direction, and a strong drive for results. He has been the recipient of several international awards for outstanding performance. Very passionate about social issues, keen to give back to society and contribute to the well-being development of differently able. I would now like to hand over this mic to Chandramouli sir, and I would like him to take it forward from here. And welcoming all other dignitaries. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Archana madam, and thanks for the elaborate introduction. And first of all, let me welcome everybody on this panel, including Archana madam, for this particular discussion. And just a couple of things, as we had discussed earlier also, I think we need to be very conscious about time, and also the fact that I think each participant can speak for about 6 minutes and then sum up in the last 1 minute of their time. And we have also specifically designated what are the questions that will appear and the order in which the panelists will appear. I think first is Tilakam, the second is Nidhi, the third one is Vinit, the fourth one is Pawan, the fifth one is Rahul ji, sixth one is Niranjan, and the seventh one is Mr. Darial. So before I go forward, I think I would like to make a few opening comments on this particular subject that is of great topical interest. At present, the unemployment rate in India is about 8%, and it is about 3x in the case of the Divyangs or the differently abled. And we are in the midst, or we are probably in the process of evolution of going into a gig economy, where the earlier concepts that we had of permanent employment and getting a gold watch at the end of 30 years or 32 years is probably almost at the end of its tenure. And the other most important thing, as Archana ma'am rightly pointed out, we have 1.4 billion population. So it can be looked at as both as an advantage or also as a disadvantage, because if we have to get the benefit of or derive the benefit of having a large workforce which can produce a lot of talented people and which does produce a lot of talented people, then we must also understand and accept that it's almost next to impossible to provide sustainable, gainful employment to everybody. So what is the answer? The answer is to have an entrepreneurial mindset, which helps one not only to gainfully employ themselves, but it should also help them to create gainful employment for others. So in this context, I think, many of you would have seen the advertisement of the Delhi administration, which says, Achi se naukri karna, and then, it says, finally it ends with, the business blasters that the Deputy Chief Minister speaks about. I think it's a very, very relevant theme that needs to be discussed and brought about. And also, we need to, look at what is it that is very important in terms of becoming an entrepreneur. It's not, as again, Archana ma'am pointed out, it's not a simple thing that, to just say that, become an entrepreneur. It's not so easy. So therefore, in order to examine the various dimensions of this problem and also bring various perspectives from an NGO to a private organization to a government organization, we have a large panel, very experienced and also, very passionate about this particular exercise. I now call upon Tilakam to, address the first question, which is dealing with, what are the behavioral and mindset transformation that one needs to effect in order to become an entrepreneur? Over to you, Tilakam.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chandramouli. I think great to be part of this panel. And
just 1 second. I think I forgot something. I should have introduced all the panelists. I'm so sorry. Please excuse me for this. So I think I'll introduce the panelists. The first panelist I'll introduce is Vinit Saraiwala. Vinit is the founder at Atypical Advantage, which is the planet's first talent platform to hire talent, find jobs, buy product and art made by persons with disabilities. He has transformed how people with disabilities shop across India through pioneering concepts like Sabke Liye, which is a blend of assistive services and accessible spaces, and Quiet Hour, which is a sensory-friendly experience for individuals with autism. He has pursued his post-graduation from the IIM Bangalore and strongly believes that generation of compassion is the only way to make the world a better place. He's also an avid trekker and marathoner, endurance cyclist, and a lifelong volunteer. His Ladakh marathon story is showcased as a documentary. Blind people can run too. The second panelist I introduce now is Pawan Kumar Munta. Pawan is a visually impaired disability rights activist and a farmer engaged in promoting natural and regenerative agriculture in India. He has been a strong advocate of cross-disability perspective for the last 2 decades. As the founder member of Swadhikar Center for Disabilities, Information Research and Resource Development, a registered NGO, Pawan has imparted human rights education training across India. Pawan was one of the key persons whose advocacy for inclusion of persons with disabilities in Mahatma Gandhi Rural Guarantee Employment Scheme in 2006 and 2007 enabled over 4 lakh persons with disabilities to get employment and exercise their right to work. I now move on to Tilakam Rajendran, who is incidentally on the screen. Tilakam has been working in the disability sector for the past 30 years, starting her career as a special educator at AIDI NGO and later as the managing director of Arunim, an initiative of National Trust under MSJE, promoting livelihoods. She created path-breaking model for 250 producer groups with disabilities across the country through design innovations, market intelligence, and mentoring support to be seen as artisans and entrepreneurs with disabilities. She was an unreasonable fellow 2011 Boulder, Colorado for Arunim's work chosen to be one of the world's best social enterprise and also as the most innovative projects in the world in 2013 by Zero Project Vienna. A strong quest to empower all persons with disabilities drove Mrs. Tilakam and her husband, K.V. Rajendran, to create a social enterprise alliance to promote abilities and rehabilitation LLP at par in 2015 and also launched NEDAR, Network for Entrepreneurs with Disability for Assistance and Rehabilitation, for the first ever business network for entrepreneurs with disability in India on 1st June 2019. She has been a recipient of the NCPDP Shell Helen Keller Award in 2011 and also has been awarded as a Woman Entrepreneur Achiever by the DMA in 2018. ATPAR has also been awarded the Role Model Organization by the NCPDP Mindtree Helen Keller 2011. Nidhi Goyal is the next panelist I am introducing. Nidhi Goyal is an Indian disability and gender rights activist who has been appointed to the UN Women Executive Directors Advisory Group. Goyal is the founder and executive director of Mumbai-based NGO Rising Flame and works in the areas of sexuality, gender, health and rights for women and girls with disabilities. The next panelist is T.D. Darial, former State Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities, NCT of Delhi. Shri T.D. Darial holds a master's degree in Economics and Business Administration from the University of Hull, UK. Currently, he is President, National Association for the Blind, Delhi, Executive Director, Center for Accessibility in Built Environment Foundation, and Advisor Disability in CBM. Shri Darial has varied experience as a civil servant for more than 3 decades in various ministries. Working for the rights of persons with disability is his passion, which decided his career path. He resigned from the civil services to be able to continue working as Deputy Chief Commissioner for Persons with Disabilities, Government of India, which he joined in 2002. Additionally, he has also worked as Member Secretary, Rehabilitation Council of India for some time. Shri Darial compiled a book entitled Judgments on Disability Issues and contributed in bringing out publications on human rights regime for persons with disabilities. He has also presented papers on various disability matters at national and international forums. The next panelist I'm introducing is Rahul Gupta ji. Rahul Gupta is a passionate banker with over 15 years of rich experience across customer segments, both in India and in the UK. He earned his economics degree from the St. Stephen's College and Delhi School of Economics. Rahul leads the way for empowerment of PWDs in rather inaccessible in the inaccessible profession of banking for visually impaired. Rahul has held several key positions of responsibility and has been accredited for building and scaling up several successful large businesses for the bank. He has consistently been a part of the organization's top talent pool, breaking all myths on abilities of PWDs, committed to contribute to society. Rahul is working towards spreading positivity and writes blogs under the Vision Beyond site WordPress.com and is associated with several NGOs, including Sarthak, as a member of its advisory board. And the next person I'm introducing is Niranjan Khatri, founder iSambhav. Niranjan is the ex-general manager, environment initiatives of ITC Hotels, and pioneered the concept of eco-design in ITC Bay Island, Port Blair, way back in the 1990s when it was a novel concept. Since then, he has been associated with the countless environmental and sustainability initiatives with hotels in India. He is also a recipient of the Helen Keller Award in 2006 and 2011, Green Hotelier Award 2010, and Parivartan Sustainability Leadership Award 2012, IGBC Fellow Award 2016, and trained more than 2,600 teachers in 1,200 schools, including 6 rural schools, in understanding the nuances of ecological design. So from the profiles that I've read out, I think we have a huge panel waiting for us to deliver their inputs. So I start with Tilakam. So first of all, my apologies for having missed this introduction. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon and namaste to all, and thank you, Mr. Chandramouli, for having given me the pleasure to be part of this very, very enriched panel, also sharing our small experiences amongst all the audience who are here today. So having said that, I think your question was on mindset transformation and behavioral change. So I think the first transformation has happened today. I would say from morning I've been hearing about how we are giving trust, and especially to Sarthak. I'm really thankful that we took this as a very important panel discussion to be talking about entrepreneurs and job creators. So today, when we ourselves have started looking at giving them the perception change of getting them to address them as entrepreneurs, I think the mindset has started to change. And I think that is where I think we need to really, because perception and mindset is not person-based. And I believe that it's the entire society, the family, the ecosystem, which brings in that perception. And that's where I think the change, if it happens, I think it already makes a big revolution when we talk about entrepreneurs coming into existence. And so having said that, the real identity of people needs to come in first, like what we said about artisans, artists, and entrepreneurs, farmers, and then of course the disability. So I can narrate short that when I had addressed about an artisan with disability, of course, to a very big a promoter of artisans in the country, they just didn't believe, and they said, no, artisans nahi ho sakta hai. They are all NGO trained people, and inbuilt entrepreneurs nahi ban sakte hain. And that's where the persistence and the pursuance of this artisan had happened about I'm talking about 10 years back. And today I'm talking about yesterday when the artisan himself was invited to be part of this exhibition. And today we are not there in the picture, but the artisan directly is being invited and given that space to promote his products. So I think the journey has begun, and we need that conducive environment and ecosystem to come along. Yes, there has been inhibitions. There is a fear of failure, rejection, lack of exposure, and all that is there. But how do we bring them at par with SMEs of the country? So what is it that we need to do? How do we address this huge challenge of mindset? And I think today the conversation revolves under entrepreneurship. I remember 20 years back, the same thing happened with the job sector, when we said about job matching and skills. And so that's where I think the game changer has already happened. And having said that, I would say that there are not many people who have chosen entrepreneurship or self-employment opportunity, not because of choice, because of survival. They had no choice for them but to start an entrepreneurial journey. And having started it, how they struggle to sustain or scale it. And that's where the role of we form the ecosystem. And I think nurturing this ability of entrepreneurship, and that's why we call them NEEDER. And NEEDER is like what you had mentioned earlier, is a network of entrepreneurs we created. But NEEDER is fearless in Hindi. And I believe people who go beyond barriers, who take up entrepreneurial activity, are really fearless, and they go on trying and persisting their entrepreneurial journey, whether the ecosystem is conducive or not. So today, if we nurture honing their business skills, giving them the ecosystem, like at Par works on working with incubation centers, accelerator programs, and we give them the necessary market linkage, financial linkage. Of course, technology today plays a huge role. So all this, if come together, like the same thing what happened in the job scenario, I think entrepreneurs are not far behind when they are job creators. I would want to give a small example of how we did a small dipstick of our 110 entrepreneurs of NEEDER members, and we found about 22 of them have already provided 256 jobs. So the person whom we were talking about, and out of which 33 were already people with disability. So these, I call them invisible contributors. They are people who pay taxes, who are providing jobs to people, but they are not visible. They are not there in any of the priority sector. So we say that entrepreneurs with disabilities or women, the other groups, segments of marginalized groups, all come under priority sector. But somewhere we fall short of getting the support for them. Secondly, the mindset of the charity model. Yes, there is that mindset, but we keep telling them during our training. And just last night, one of the entrepreneur called up and he said, he is part of an exhibition and he is running a Punjabi rasoi stall there. And he said, "Yahan 2 baje tak itna bheed hai, ma'am, we are just, fully engaged in this." So there, his product and performance matters. People go to him because he has got hot jalebis and samosas ready for him, not because he's a person with disability selling or, running the shop. So I think disability vanishes the minute he becomes an entrepreneur, the minute he has a great product, and the minute the customers are thriving to him. I think that's where the change happens automatically. There is no, great skill development here except for honing his business skills so that he doesn't, struggle and he gets the right product, gets his right product right. So I think the time has come when our invisible contributors should become visible, and corporate should give more opportunity to create vendor development programs, which happens naturally in other industries, that they push vendor development program, they give them machines, they give them skills, and they, absorb their products. So I think it's time we need to look at this space and create a conducive environment and opportunity give them a mocha, and like we are telling in this, I keep comparing the job placements and the entrepreneurial journey because it's nothing different. It just requires that kind of a trust and trust them with the financial and market linkage. I think they are the future job creators, even for our industry. And that goes without saying because I've seen it happening in my 30 years. And I'm sure with our panelists here, they are going to share all their experiences, which is going to give great insights of what entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship in the disability sector is going to do and create wonders. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Tilakamji. I think very thoughtful ideas that you have placed and also your experiences. I now call upon Nidhi Goyal to speak on the intersectional issues in self-employment and entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandramouli, and thank you so much, Sarthak, for organizing this very important discussion on many, many important dialogues here in this conference. I'll probably just start by recapping what was so wonderfully said, because some of the solutions are going to remain the same, talking about better vendor program, onboarding programs, or more support and skill development, financial linkages. We also had trusting them with financial and market linkages, both thinking about what this enabling ecosystem would look like. And that would be very important to think about. Before I can talk about some solutions, I just want to start with why thinking about gender is important when you look at any kind of opportunities that we're speaking about. So becoming an entrepreneur, why in this kind of panel are we talking about gender? Gender is a very broad term, so I'm going to stick with women. And why is there a focus on an importance to speak about here? Yes, approximately 12 million, as per official data, there is 12 million approximately women who live with a disability, right? In the country, it's not a small number. It's never been a small number, but according to global data, the data is even bigger and much, much more in depth. The reasons here of not seeing enough of women in the entrepreneurial space, women with disabilities in the entrepreneurial space, understanding some of those very gender-specific barriers would be important to finding gender-specific solutions or fostering this kind of inclusion or equality in this space. I'll just start with a small story. We had at Rising Flame, in the past decade of experience working at the intersection of disability and gender in India and globally, we've seen that there are multiple barriers, and all the barriers have an interlinked impact on lives of women with disabilities. But here in the COVID, when we were collecting data across the country and publishing the report Neglected and Forgotten at Rising Flame, one of the very important things, one story that stood out for me was that the woman said that in COVID, I used to run this small stall and that had to be shut because of the finances drying up. And what happened as a result was that, being one of the contributors, her disability and her financial contribution, and she being a woman, came all together. And in the COVID crisis, when she lost this kind of financial contribution to the family, she faced very, very high levels of violence. Financial independence, entrepreneurial ventures, having the opportunities to safety, access, and abuse are all very interlinked. And that is very important for us as society, as community, as people to think about. We're looking at what women with disabilities and what kind of environments that they live. And why understanding that is important to think about enabling ecosystems. They live in an environment where disability is considered a bigger shame for, because you're a woman, and somehow communities and societies are still geared towards women being quote unquote perfect, and disability is considered a shame. So either that kind of reasonable accommodation is not provided to them, the identification of disability does not happen. In the numbers, you're absolutely invisible, but also lack of opportunities because of the stigma and barriers. And I believe one of my family members will talk about barriers. But the barriers that the biggest stigma that people with disability face in non-disabled societies, but also families. And like you spoke about artisan groups, but in general in families as well, that you're a burden and you will be incapable. This whole lens of incapability, and starting from that space for women with disabilities, and a lens of protection, that women don't go out and do this. Business is a very male-dominated thing that you do. You do not, in rural areas, in semi-urban areas, the narrative often, or even in many parts of urban areas, the narrative is that there is a businessman, right? And it is not a business person. Entrepreneur is a very recently developed language, but just to think about how that works and how the gender lens works, there is a control of finances. So if the woman is trying to access finances that's available, she may have inherited money, she may have existing money, she may have earned money, she may have award money, but the ultimate financial control is either with the family or the male caregiver very often. So we're looking at a lack of opportunities in the education system, in the skill development space, in an opportunity to access external spaces, in particularly in light of inaccessible infrastructure, where safety again becomes a concern. With all of this coming together as a confluence of the barriers or the multiple barriers that women with disabilities face, what happens is that participation reduces. Participation not just in education life and social life, but participation in economic life and economic initiatives, in being included in schemes and policies, and being equally considered in initiatives goes down. Very often, again, when you're talking about with women groups for entrepreneurship. So like Tilakam just shared about going to artisan groups and talking about artisans with disabilities, if you go to women entrepreneur initiatives or women leadership initiatives, very often what you see is that the conversation is that this is for women, but women with disabilities are standing at the margin. So somewhere that kind of inclusion gets slipped by many, many large initiatives, which are providing a range of services, right from microfinance to skill development to trainings, to developing a business sense, that kind of skill opportunities. And then the other piece becomes about the disability space, where we now, and I'm really grateful in this panel that we're thinking about the gender lens or bringing that to the table, where a specific gender barrier or barrier that women with disabilities face and the additional support that they may need is not taken into consideration. So this slipping between the cracks and then being invisible in policy because of the lack of data, but also then thinking about having very stringent policy restrictions about this can be done. There's also very gendered entrepreneurial ventures that women are encouraged, that you start your salon is something that's a very famous thing in rural areas, and that's something that's encouraged. But if you are deaf or have a speech difficulty, then the communication piece and how to navigate that is not a skill that is built. Access to legal information. So when we talk about access to broader information that women with disabilities have a barrier to, or people with disabilities have a barrier to, having access to legal information around what being an entrepreneur means, what legalities are included, what kind of financial literacy is required, and that again another panelist is going to consider. So thinking about intersectionality and just stepping beyond the gender lens, if you think about caste intersectionality, and we were talking to rural women with disabilities, and they were talking about how they were not allowed to set up shops in certain areas, which could be more lucrative for them as entrepreneurs, because they were Dalit women with disabilities, and those sections of the villages, those sections of the townships were denied to them. So thinking about intersectionality when we are in this space or talking about job creation is very important. When we have all of these overcoming barriers, it's also to think about what's the imagery that's typically assumed or thought about when you think about a successful entrepreneur or a successful leader or a job creator or someone who is in that space, or a boss or a supervisor. It's very often a non-disabled male imagery that comes to mind. And so thinking about disrupting this imagery, and why job creation when women are leading teams also, they face many barriers within their own teams, thinking about, in spite of being job creators, around leading teams and sustaining that kind of entrepreneurial ventures. There's also the idea about self-sustaining teams. And so I run a social impact organization. When I say a nonprofit organization, and over the short period of 4 years of this existence, or since I have founded the organization, we've employed we've worked closely with around 50 to 60 staff, experts, consultants, and so on and so forth. And 80% of those have been living with disabilities, chronic illnesses, and health conditions. So understanding and how to build this cost of self-sustaining teams of which are self-led, and how do we incorporate this reasonable accommodation cost and other disability-related costs in our entrepreneurial journey and that kind of learning. I'm concluding the point. It's extremely important to think what could be the solutions in addition to what Tilakam has shared is to have inclusion in existing programs and existing development programs and financial support, literacy, training, development initiatives, and language accessibility, since India is not a one country, one disability kind of entrepreneurial conversations that we're having. Thank you so much for this space.
Yeah, I now call upon Vinit Saraiwala to speak on how technology is an enabler for entrepreneurs.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Vinit.
Yeah. I think thank you to Sarthak for the opportunity. And I think Tilakam made a very interesting comment, which was on supplier diversity. And I think this is very big globally, and this needs to take control in India also, with companies focusing on entrepreneurs with disability and giving them opportunity. Nidhi was focusing on women, and I am here to probably share 3 stories. In fact, 2 of them are from women, and one is someone with a boy, Swami. So my story revolves around 3 people. One is Simran Chawla. She's a person with visual disability, and someone from the United States actually hired her for a digital freelancing assignment. And this is how the importance of technology is there. When people with disabilities asked for remote working opportunities, it was not given to them, but COVID has showed us that this is completely possible, and companies can easily transform into remote working environments. And she got an opportunity from abroad, and she's working in India, doing things remotely, freelancing as a person with visual disability, and doing incredibly well for that podcaster as such. Another story was she was from Shibani Ghosh, and Shibani is an accomplished singer from Bengal, and won lot of laurels. And when COVID hit, I'm very sure performing artists and visual artists were the most affected among any other community, be it with disability or without disability. And she got like no shows and so on. What we simply did is equip them in how to get virtual shows, and she got 2 shows from our platform, and earned a living with dignity, and supporting her own family during these times. There was another artist from Chennai, so we moved from Simran Chawla, who was from Delhi, to Shibani, who was from Calcutta, to Swami. And Swami is an artist with autism. And again, all the art shows were halt, no exhibitions was happening, and so on. And suddenly his 7 artworks were picked by buyers, which went to a lot of CXOs as well as people in Singapore and Dubai and so on. So I think people with disabilities have the talent. It's just that they need to be nurtured with technology. Just to brief you on Atypical Advantage. Atypical Advantage tries to support a lot of entrepreneurs with disability, creating more freelancing opportunities for performing artists, visual artists, as well as hiring. And this is there's nothing like this globally. And now we are getting requests, like recently we got a request from a London-based founder to hire a graphic designer with autism. And I think this is the power of technology. And the platform is actually trying to aggregate any kind of skills which people with disability have, and give them their entrepreneurship through the platform. And we already have supported like 100 plus artists, 20 plus singers, and so on. And similarly with job seekers, now with remote work a reality, a lot of people with disabilities can start their own businesses, and probably that gives them more flexibility, besides full-time jobs, which Tilakam has already spoken about in brief. So I think just to sum everything very quickly, I think first, let's harness the power of technology. Second, focus on the strengths of each person with disability and see how we can leverage those strengths. And there is again no shortcuts. Ultimately, a company or a brand or an individual who is buying services needs to be of the highest quality, and like how samosas and jalebis were being made by one of our entrepreneurs with disabilities. So ultimately, if we can support them into upskilling them, giving them the business knowledge, I think we could probably create entrepreneurs not only for Indian audiences, but people with disabilities can serve a global audience across and in international markets, earning income with dignity. And I think entrepreneurship gives that dignity. Just to brief you my entrepreneurship journey, I also quit my job during COVID to start this platform. And as being a person with visual disability, I only have 10% vision remaining in my right eye, and started the journey. It was tough with so much inaccessible things, navigating paperwork, legal, and so on independently. It is challenging but I think technology is still better, and we are in a better phase to do much more for people with disabilities, and go on and probably serve every person with disability through entrepreneurship. I think that's a very good way, because a lot of people with disabilities, due to certain barriers, prefer a certain way of living and so on. So yeah, that's my story. And probably let's harness technology, focus on the positive sides, or probably what skills people with disabilities there, as there is this famous quote that everyone is good at something, and I think entrepreneurship can focus on that piece. So thank you for giving me this space.
So thank you, Vinit. I think very inspiring stories that you put out, and should be a very nice feedback for a lot of people. Now, I would like to call on Pawan Munta to make his give his views on barriers for disabled people regarding self-employment perspectives. Pawanji, you're on mute, Pawanji. Hello? Hello? Pawanji, please unmute. We can't hear you. Pawanji, can you unmute and speak?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, sorry about this.
Yeah.
Let me formally thank Sarthak and the esteemed team given me this for giving this opportunity to participate in this wonderful discussion. And I think I don't need to talk much, because the barriers, the issue of barriers doesn't arise after looking at the expertise of Tilakam, followed by Vinit and Nidhi. They have already indicated where exactly these barriers are, but to take it from a kind of a rural point of view, and also in a sense that it is time for us to look at an ecological point of view. So on those lines, I would see how we could connect up with the issue of barriers in accessing self-employment and entrepreneurial opportunities in the area of mitigating our climate change. I think many of you are quite aware of the fact that there is this climate change issue. In fact, scientists have already started calling it as a climate emergency. And not just scientists, in fact, industry all over the world is talking about climate emergency today. That is one very critical area that all of us should look into. And at the same time, what exactly are the opportunities coming up in future to mitigate this climate emergency? In fact, ILO recently has come out with an idea that there will be around 18 million green entrepreneurship employment opportunities coming up by 2030. So if I were to call on that kind of a target and look back at the contingency of energies that we have in rural areas and also urban areas, what are the aspects, what are the key aspects that we look into? One is one of the key aspects that we can chip in and see the energies and potential of persons with disabilities in the area of agriculture and its allied sectors. I just indicate some area, some specifics in agriculture sector. One is that to transform people from conventional farming, that is farming which is based on chemical fertilizer, pesticide, and seed management, the seed marketing. These are the key areas, and then promotion of farmer self-help groups, FPOs, farmer producer organizations, and these are the key areas for business and business entrepreneurship programs. So, and then the idea of resource that is available in rural areas is that if 86% of the population or persons with disabilities live in rural areas, they are invariably connected to agriculture or allied sectors like agriculture, and then you have animal husbandry, you have poultry, you have goat and sheep, and then you have dairy. So these are the potential areas where you could see the wealth of inherited knowledge in the minds of people with disabilities over there. So how does one really enhance the skills of our skill training institutions? Because our mindset is totally changed and our focus is changed, and and it is slowly moved towards, in the last two decades, I think our governance moved towards a kind of an urbanization and urban-based industry, urban-based self-employment and entrepreneurship programs, so on and so forth. So in that context, the focus will have to be relocated again on the requirements of the climate mitigation strategy, which is invariably linked to the protection and promotion of natural farming, through which you can mitigate climate change. And there is a big area for persons with disabilities to occupy as resource persons, and then and their role also is there in kind of processing and making end products for consumers. So, and there is a need for technology. Of course, Vinit is talking about various barriers, and everyone knows. But very interestingly, Vinit, to converse with Vinit, in fact, information technology is more openly coming out to remove all the barriers, and it is highly encouraging in that area. So there will be, once if you start asking questions, I think industry, in fact, information technologies industry is open to offer solutions and make the technology accessible to us. So I wanted us to also understand the fact that when you see that finding self-employment opportunities or entrepreneurship opportunities for persons with disabilities, one of the big barriers is that the attitude, which I think very softly handled by Tilakam in the beginning. I don't go into that, but still, what we need to understand is that as you start moving into the direction of finding oneself in the role of a leader, as Nidhi was talking about, you will start looking at a kind of an opportunity that melts the barrier and you move ahead. So that is the spirit in which we will have to relocate our attention in rural areas and see how you contribute to your own survival, you contribute to your own survival as a family, and at the same time, you will become more socially responsible individual, addressing the issues of climate change and entrepreneurship. Okay, so that is one of the key areas. And then if I were to move into the urban areas, like when the industry started looking at this transition, and as ILO calls it, the just transition in that area. So what are the transport you have today? Let it, whether it is accessible or not is one question, but is it environmentally friendly? And yesterday I was looking at an article written by one of these very interesting authors. He says that most of our vehicles now are getting modified to run with electricity. Like, they are redesigning. In fact, redesigning new vehicles is one area, but they are also finding a solution for the existing vehicles where they remove these diesel and petrol run machinery and replace it with electricity. That is the key area where you find a lot of ways of thinking. So I'm stopping in a minute.
Kindly conclude. Yeah, thanks.
I'm stopping in a minute. So I wanted us to really look at the new opportunities coming in the area of climate change and climate mitigation strategies, and the world is open for us, and the entire world will have to go through that exercise in the next few decades to come. And I am sure that persons with disabilities have enormous opportunities of self-employment and entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawanji. Great perspective. And I am now call upon our next panelist, Rahul Gupta ji, to give his perspective on the question of importance of digital literacy and financial literacy for PWDs.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me an opportunity, and thank you, Sarthak. I am always in awe of the entrepreneurial spirit. Incidentally, in the business that I run, I get to meet new age entrepreneurs almost every day, listen to dozens of stories, both from investors and from the entrepreneurs themselves. But what I hear today literally gives me goosebumps, and it shows how we can bring a change with the power of entrepreneurs. Given I'm being asked to talk about digital literacy and financial literacy, I've only been thinking, what do I speak post such phenomenal thoughts came in. But maybe I will try to put a perspective from somebody who has been on the other side of the table. Thankfully, I have an opportunity to support these businesses attain next level through financial, through capital optimization and other structures. But as a person with special abilities, and as Mr. Chandramouli mentioned in my introduction, I am operating in a sector which is rather perceived to be inaccessible for people with disabilities. Given I have a visual impairment, it is often difficult for people to absorb and understand how I'm able to deal with the complexities of the financial world, where we have to deal with complex data sets, documents, and still be upbeat. In today's time and age, of course, the way that tech has been transforming our lives has been phenomenal. And one of the things that I learned very early is it's important to be friends with technology and not to be slaves. What I mean by this, I have been constantly challenging myself as well by being agile and not sticking to a particular technology. I remember, because the technology has been really changing by every nanosecond now. And the way I have literally been doing it is by constantly moving from devices which use different operating systems, using devices which are different. And it is something, this agility and ability to learn, that has always helped me stay up the curve. Our late President, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam once said, all of us are not born with equal talent, but we are born with equal opportunities to acquire this talent. And in today's time and age, where the systems are filled with courses, whereby we can go up the curve, literally, at the comfort of our couch. We really don't even have to move. It's important to keep, one is to get into a comfort zone and say, hey, I'm happy in what I'm doing. But that's where breaking the barriers gets very, very critical. Given, as I said, I get to see the world from the other side, there is so much interest in the investing world, where people are now talking, and there's a buzzword called social investing. So there is enough and more people who are looking for these ideas to invest in. And what's that tells us is each one of us, on whatever part of the journey we are, we constantly go up, make technology our friend, go up the curve. Now, it's only this that helps me day in, day out, manage my business with ease. The way I'm able to, for example, manage my computer is probably with the movement of my hands, by leveraging some of this. And how do I did it? Of course, getting digitally literate. At the same time, all of us understand and know the true independence comes when you are financially independent. And again, for Divyangs, who anyways have millions of other things to tackle and deal with, it's important they understand the complexities of the financial world. They understand the different instruments that are available to them. They understand the protections that are available to them through different instruments and products, let's say like insurance and others. So, and then there's enough more that our friends are doing in this space. We have to constantly, as a community, come forth, empower people next level. We might fail at the first time, but again, as somebody once said, the span fail, it is first attempt in learning, and that's very, very critical. That we are always up on the learning spree and be independent in all forms, and all of us, I'm sure, on the panel here, to another level, which has now empowered us to live a life with dignity. I will not take much time on the panel, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul. Great perspective once again. I will now call upon Niranjan Khatri to speak on new opportunities from what his personal experience is.
Good afternoon, everybody. Helen Keller said it's a terrible thing to see and have no vision. This is very particular to me just now because I complained that my video is not working. I've just moved from an old video where the camera was right in front of me to a new desktop where you have to raise the camera. So I forgot to raise the camera, which shows it's a terrible thing to see and have no vision. It's very pertinent to me.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So I'd like to focus on 4 or 5 areas with regards to change. In this field of sustainability, we are still stigmatized. People have mentioned this. Majority of the people with disabilities, they're either illiterate or gone to 3rd or 4th standard. Only very few people have gone to the top thanks to the family support. Therefore, it's important to change the ecosystem. And one of the things that we need to do is that our MBA colleges and engineering colleges must have this as a subject so that when these engineers and MBA people come out, they're conversant with the subject. Otherwise, what is happening today is, thanks to ESG is environment, social governance, now industries are waking up because there's pressure on them for diversity and inclusion. And then I was reading a SEBI report, BRSR, Business Reporting Sustainability Report, 23,000 top companies will have to report on social issues. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity of where the soil is becoming richer and opportunities for people with disabilities will increase. The second is very important that organizations are empathetic with people with disability, no sympathy, because sympathy only leads to crocodile tears, and those crocodile tears can solve the water problem. Expectation. So after having imparted professional inputs to people with disabilities, we must ask for more from them. Don't accommodate them. But first, it's imperative that the industry gives them the requisite tools and knowledge and create that confidence so that they are not differentiated vis-a-vis the so-called able people. And the person with disabilities, when they are given a job, they must be fully empowered, and this can only happen when the induction is good and the organizations take a serious note of how to handle this subject. And engagement. Engagement can be increased with PWD by sensitizing the HR community. And I'll give you an example of this. When we started this initiative in my erstwhile job, our HR manager got a mobility impaired girl who came with her parents for a job in one of our hotels. And the HR manager said, "You will work in the engineering control room." Now, the parents were worried that their daughter will be working in a room where there's fire or something of that sort. The HR manager read the body language of the parents and he said, "Please take your daughter, let her go to the engineering control room and see what kind of job she'll be doing." So she was taken along with the parents to the engineering control room. They found an air-conditioned room with a computer and a telephone, and calls come over there from various parts of the hotel to address the complaints which are there in various departments for the engineering department. The moment the parents went there, the whole body language changed. They said, "Oh wow, my daughter is going to work over here." So that is the meaning of empowerment and engaging with people. But there are many opportunities which somebody rightly said that COVID has opened up the eyes of the industry that people need not come to the workplace. And there are a lot of such opportunities which are lurking in the organization which need to be tapped, like accounting function, wherever a person with disability has those skills like Rahul, right? Or admin task, or, if, for instance, if you're in semi-urban areas, there are agarbatti units. The agarbatti units can be rolled at home instead of the person going to the factory, or assembling pens. All the parts are given to that person and they assemble it at home and then send it to the factory. And one of the other initiatives that I started in ITC hotels was, I was in Gurgaon and there were a lot of IT industries. So I requested all my IT industry friends to give the people with hearing and speech impairment kiosks 4 feet by 4 feet to sell chocolates or whatever. And these kiosks was in the canteen. And in IT sector, as you know, the canteen operates 24/7. So with the help of their family who purchased and brought the stuff over there, the hearing and speech impaired people were handling the shop. So one day I was in HCL and I asked one of the girls who were buying from him, I said, "Do you have a problem and any problem in communication with this person?" And the reply was, "Oh, he's so handsome." Then she said, no, I have no problem at all. We do a transaction with sign language itself. So what is happening? By doing all this, from the back of the house, we started people with disabilities to be employed. We created an internal churn and we created an external churn. And I feel that there are lots of opportunities, and therefore, with the BRSR code coming into the country very soon, our community will be armed with this knowledge so that they use these words and get the ball going. And in summation, I'll say we must look for that which we've been trained not to see, and there's a lot to see. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Niranjan sir. I think it was a very enlightening thing. What you said, the first opening comment was too good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I now call upon Shri Darial to speak on the role of policy building in entrepreneurship and self-employment of people with disability.
Namaskar. Good afternoon to everybody.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Madam Marchana ji, Chandramouli ji, and my co-panelists. There have been excellent presentations, excellent perspectives, and most of my job is already done. So this topic, I think, is also very important because all of us, all our panelists, have emphasized on the ecosystem. We need that ecosystem. Tilakam madam said, and many people with disabilities have become entrepreneurs, not by choice. Majburi mein ho gaye, or kuch, there's no other window. So that's one. And most of the entrepreneurs we are looking at, whether my legislation or my policy or the thinking in the industry, in the corporates, is small business, small work. We don't think of big for them. because we still have that kind of mindset that people with disabilities would not be able to do. So again, we have those inhibitions, barriers, how to break them. Now, if I look at the legislation, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, Section 19, it talks about loans at concessional rates. It talks about employment, also self-employment, mainstream or specifically for people with disabilities. Then again, I'm saying even in the legislation, it's a micro, including microcredit. So we have, for people with disabilities, a small world, even in our legislation. Why don't we think that the people with disabilities can be big industries, big entrepreneurs? So that mindset has to, we have to move from that small to the big one. That's one. And then the legislation, there is a mandate in the act that the government and appropriate governments must provide for marketing of products made by people with disabilities, and of course, skill training. So having talked about the legislation, which is mandatory, and if you do not implement it, you are liable to be punished. So despite that, the unfortunate thing is that many people do not know, are not aware about the legislation. Since the topic itself says policy, this legislation has to be backed by policy and programs and schemes by the government or the corporate sector or industry associations. So unless that is done, there will be, we will restrict the people with disabilities to a particular, say, box. So giving them opportunity is very important, and making this policy, legislation schemes for people with disabilities as part of the ecosystem is extremely important. वो सभी चीजें अब मिलेंगी एक साथ में, तभी वो आगे बढ़ पाएंगे, बैरियर भी टूटेंगे, सब कुछ होगा। तो इसके लिए हम सोचते हैं कि लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड इज एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट। लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड इस एक्ट में दिया हुआ है और हमें पॉलिसी की जरूरत है। टुडे वी डू नॉट हैव ए सेपरेट और an inclusive rather policy for and development and promotion of entrepreneurship among people with disabilities across the different industry segments. MSM, we talk only about SMSE. Why SMSE? Why not all? How do you promote that? How do you promote people with disabilities to climb the ladder of as an entrepreneur? Say, for example, if I look at certain provisions that are there in our country, in the industry, say many people with disabilities do not get loans from the government or even NHFDC, which is National Handicap Finance Development Corporation. Even the channelizing agencies of the National Handicap Finance Development Corporation need some collaterals. Then only one will get the loan at concessional rate. So how a person with disabilities can bring, say, even for small business. So therefore, I think all the loans to persons with disabilities should be covered under the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust for micro and small enterprise, which is available to us. So it should, that loan should also be, because that apprehension of the the banks and all this will has to be overcome. Then another is why I'm saying there is, again, I see there is some discrimination against people with disabilities. It is not intentional. It is unintentional. It is because people do not know about that. So waiver of fee to MSMEs, Global Mart, annual premium of 6,000 or now 3,000 probably is exempted. The SC/STs are exempted. Why not people with disabilities, entrepreneurs with disabilities? So that, I think that these should be our recommendations to the government. I've seen in the background note that this conference at the end will send recommendation to the government. There are very small things, but then they should be. So I should see, one is the equality, another is the level playing field that we need to give for people. What Mr. Niranjan said, the HR, they're being little conscious, little sensitive, very difference. So then government incentives to the enterprises who provide, say, outsourcing. Again, Mr. Niranjan's example, he told his colleagues across industry to employ people with disabilities. So if you can outsource, if you have some incentive scheme. There is a provision in the Act for incentive scheme for people with disabilities. For employment, we should also have for development of entrepreneurs. Nothing stops you from doing that. That if you outsource to the enterprises of persons with disabilities, then these are the concessions for it. It could be a national award for you. So there will be a lot of encouragement. Then this also is, I think, very important, the reservation. We have reservation, 25% reservation for SMSEs, and out of that 25%, 4% is for SC/ST and 3% for women. Why not for people with disabilities? So that, I think, these should be our recommendations. And I tell you, I have very critical example to give. I think I'll sum it up now. There is one Mr. Nitin Bindlish. He acquired disability, blindness. He and his father used to run an industry, a factory in Sonipat or Panipat, and they live in Delhi. And his father has fallen sick. This person has become now almost completely blind. Now he has been requesting government of Delhi to shift his industry to Narela, to some plot, industrial plot, which are vacant for many years. So he applied for it. Nothing happened. He came to me as a state commissioner for persons with disabilities in Delhi. So I made a recommendation. There is a provision in the Act, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, as well as in the earlier Act of 1995, that there will be reservation of 3% for people with disabilities. Did you ever reserve or allot any plot of land for that business or industry, enterprise, to any person with disabilities? The answer is clear, no. We never think that a person with disability can be a big entrepreneur. So they said, yes, we haven't given, but then we don't have a policy. You did not have an act. You did not have people with disabilities. You didn't think about it. You are looking for a precedence. You do not want to create a precedent. So I told them, recommended that he should be, till date he has not been. You have vacant plots. So that mindset has to change, Madam Tilakam. There is a change in mindset to the extent that, yes, a person who was not doing anything is now selling मूंगफली and earning his livelihood. ऐसी चीजों में भी मुझे अपना सरकार ने भी और समाज ने भी ये अपना mindset change करना जरूरी है. Then only we can perhaps go forward. So to conclude, one, all the legislative provisions must be immediately, without losing any time, backed by a clear-cut policy and schemes and programs to promote and encourage enterprise, persons with disabilities. Number two, or the concessions that you have envisaged, you have on ground for other, say, disadvantaged population of the country, say SC, ST, women, or whatever you see. So you also include people with disabilities among them, because they are the largest minority, most marginalized people. So they need more support. Give them the opportunity, give them the level playing field, and also support. I'm not saying leave them there, no. There may be many areas where they may not be able to compete without the support. There is a provision in the Act for reasonable accommodation. That reasonable accommodation must be given by the government as well as by the corporates, by the society. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I really wish all the best. And next year, when you have this kind of program, probably there is some change and we see some impact of this kind of programs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I think with that, we have completed the panel interaction. We have a, a couple of questions. I think we will take one of them. So I think this question is it is with regard to I mean, just one second, please.
Chandramouli ji, as I wrote in chat box,
Yeah.
I need to leave at 45.
Please,
45.
please, sir. You can, yeah.
If there is any question, I'll answer.
Yeah.
Is there any question for me?
No, it's not coming to you.
Thank you so
I
much.
think this will go to Vinit.
Thank you.
The question is, what are your suggestions for PWDs who choose the path of self-employment? How can they do well despite the challenges? Vinit? I think Vinit has dropped off. Okay, so I think we will move to the next part of this particular thing, that is with regard to appreciation and mementos, and that we can do now. And before that, I'll finish my comments. I think as a moderator, I think it's been my pleasure to moderate this particular discussion, and all the participants have come up with some fantastic ideas. I don't think I need to do a rehash and do a revision, because we are not in a high school or something like that. So I think I leave you with those thoughts, and I now hand over to the Sarthak panel for the mementos, appreciation mementos. So I think with that, we can wind up for this particular panel.
Before we wind up, can I make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
The way you gave the mementos is a fine example of dematerialization.
Yes. Thank you. So I think we can close. Thank you, everyone. My pleasure to have been with this particular panel. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Chandramouli ji, and in spite of you being not well, I think it's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.
I would also like to be thanking many of you here, because I'm seeing them for after a very, very long time, and a lot of new initiatives have come up in the entrepreneurial space. And I think we should all come together in one platform to take this forward. That's my...
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Tilakam.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you, everyone.